ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to recap a couple of books. I just finished this one off this morning. So here we have the Sword Defiant and its sequel, the Sword Unbound. Let me say real quickly, the way this one ends could have just been an end with some ambiguous storylines you might want to think about yourself, but there is going to be a third book, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that because I enjoyed both these books. Gareth Hanrahan, he's actually also a game designer. Didn't know that until I looked some info up this morning, and it shows in here because these are basically Dungeons and Dragons books without being officially Dungeons and Dragons books. You have all the tropes of fighters and wizards and paladins and a Dark Lord. There's actually a Dark Lord. I get a little tired of that term now. I kind of wish authors would use something other than Dark Lord or the Dark One. Go ahead and make your Dark Lord. Just don't call him a Dark Lord. We get it. We know what a Dark Lord is. Happily, though, we don't. It's not overdone. The setup for the books are that this is a retired group of heroes called the Nine, and representing 9 different types of character classes, all the way up to a shape changer. The bad guy was killed 20 years before. They don't do flashbacks. They have a better way, I thought. It's just the character thinking about what happened and not really going into the scene and bringing you into the scene of what happened. Just talking about it and thinking about it. I thought that was better than doing constant flashbacks. Despite the fact that you're not in those historical scenes, the 9, when they get together or they're talked about together, actually seem to have a really good camaraderie that is written well by the author, and I actually like that quite a bit. And also, this guy right here, Spellbreaker, this sword, a sword made by evil for evil to do evil things, but was used to defeat that evil 20 years ago. Put in the hands of this guy, Alf, and Alf here, he's the fighter. He's not stupid, but he's not the leader, and a number of times through both books he mentions that he left all the leadership to the paladin and the wizard and the thief, and he just sat around waiting for them to point and go kill that guy, and that's what he did. He is, however, he's not a bloodluster, but that's what he does. He is good at combat, and the reason they let him keep the sword is because they knew, being the person that he is, he would not use the weapon unless it's necessary to use that weapon. He is that trustworthy and loyal. This is a nuclear weapon in the hands of a good person, is what that is. Well, it's called Spellbreaker, so it is anti-magic. I don't recall too many scenes where it just, like cut through anything, but it pretty much can. It just doesn't make a big deal out of that aspect of it, but you can't stop him. It's very hard to defeat him if he's got this weapon. He can be overwhelmed. The sword does have only so much reserves of energy. It has to feed, and it feeds by killing. So it has to kill something, it takes that energy, and it uses that energy over time. It lets him know, I need to feed, and he lets it feed. It can be put away. He really doesn't use it unless he really needs to use it. Otherwise, he really doesn't like the sword. And I can't tell if the dynamic is a little funny, because the sword is intelligent. It knows what's going on, more so than Alf apparently does. And they kind of butt heads personality-wise, and sometimes you can't tell because the sword's kind of funny. And he does go at Alf with a bit of sarcasm, and sometimes you can't tell if he's just an evil thing trying to manipulate and make him do things, or if he's actually just kind of kidding around with him. He has sworn an oath to obey Alf, but at the same time, he's almost ready to turn on him, it feels like at times. So that's their dynamic, and it carries through both books. It's a lot of fun reading about the two. This one is a quest to find out what happened, because he is tipped off by another of the 9 that the tomb that they put this Dark Lord into, may have been tampered with, and he needs to go find out what happens. Another little side story there is that he does have a sister named Olva, and she has a son, being his nephew, of course, and they are taken by this guy named Boar to try to get them from where they live off to some place of safety. The kid got taken in by a merchant who's not very trustworthy. The kid wanted to go off on a quest of his own. His mother said, "Nope, I got to go after him," and Boar goes after her, and eventually both of them to get them to safety. And that's the gist of this without spoiling too much. The Sword Unbound. This was more about once that is over with, the political implications and maneuverings of the various countries and city-states. This centers upon the city that belonged to this Dark Lord called Necrad or Necrod, and everybody wants that city, and everybody wants this sword. They want these, and all the maneuverings and backstabbing going on to try to inch their way in and say this belongs to us now. All these, there's a whole other thing going on behind all of that comes to fruition here, and so it's a remarkable revelation about who's really in charge, who's manipulating what, and the cosmology and the afterlife and what's going on. All the tropes are there. Again, your character classes, the elves are a little different. Pretty much, I don't know about diabolical. I don't necessarily want to call the elves in general evil, but they have their own agenda and believe themselves to be far superior. I guess you could call them tyrants of a sort. They're so long-lived. Some of the more jerkish ones are like thousands of years old and so forth, and they're in there with their input and everything. And coming up the middle of all that is this guy with this sword, and he can be overwhelmed and is in places, but otherwise, once the sword is fed, he's virtually unstoppable. How much more can I talk about without spoiling anything? I'll just say that if I ever do a book unhaul, and there's 1,000 books surrounding me at the moment. I have unhauled before, but not since I've been a booktuber. If I ever do another one, these will not be removed from my shelves. I'm going to keep these. They're very good, and I can put them in some of the better books I've ever read. So I'm gonna do some spoilers here, not to give everything away completely. No, I'm gonna pretty much give away the end of Unbound anyway. So here's your spoilers. What is so cool here is the elves. There was an original elf. This is the title of the series is called The Lands of the Firstborn, and the Firstborn is the singular elf, and he wandered the world by himself for a while, and eventually was able to bring forth, of course, other elves, but he is actually the creator of mankind. He made people. He used magic to do it, and he claims in here that he can, just like that, undo the magic that created mankind and destroy them all. However, he may be bluffing, and we don't know that yet, even by the end of this. Alf is who he starts explaining this to, so we do see it through Alf's eyes, and Alf, he's listening, but he doesn't give a damn. He just wants all this to go away. But the elf kind of, he's called the Earl King, and he kind of talks Alf into being on his defense. In this, the first, I think it's 100 pages or so, is Boar. He's on his own again. He made his deliveries. We actually find out that it wasn't Alf who sent for him to get his sister and nephew. Someone did that in disguise. They wanted to bring more playing pieces into the game, basically to try to get this, and he winds up giving it up because he gets to a point where he just doesn't know what to do, and he gives it up, throws it in a pond. And the surprise is Boar is traveling through, and he makes some friends and comes across this pond and finds the sword himself. And so he becomes a victim of artifact possession. This is a fun little thing that they put in Dungeons and Dragons, where just because you get an artifact doesn't mean you're gonna be able to control it, and that includes magic swords. And so, whereas Alf completely resisted the machinations of this sword, Boar becomes drunk with power. Boar hates magic, and he's given a sword that can destroy magic. He goes crazy, and it's him who goes down where the Earl King is, and waiting for him is Alf in his defense. The Earl King's going to have a very tough time fighting Boar. The way this is left off, this sword, the Earl King, the problem with the elves is they don't have a happy afterlife. When they die, they become wraiths, and they just meander about. It's just a horrible existence. Or they can stay in the world, but they become vampires. The Earl King comes up with something else where he has these giant magical trees, and he ties the essence of the elves into them. Spellbreaker rather, winds up stuck in that tree and destroys magic. Whole bunch of elves start dying. A whole bunch of magic. It's like a slow moving wave, and as that wave goes out, magic starts dying. It's an outstanding ending. If they left it there, it'd have been a good ending. The sword weakened because it took all his power to do it. He still wants Alf to wield him, so he still has that kind of oath-bound loyalty. He just leaves him there. It leaves it a little ambiguous as to whether he can actually draw the sword out of the tree or not. It felt he could have done it, but we wonder if anyone else could do it, and if anyone else is gonna do it. But it's left there in that tree under the care of one of the 9, who herself was one of the elves, and she's gonna be the new caretaker. So maybe it's gonna be left guarded. Who knows? It can still talk. It still communicate. So we'll see what happens if maybe it talks someone into wielding it. Maybe Alf's got to go after it. Maybe you'll have a moment where Alf's got to go get it because he knows he needs it. His sister, she now gets, instead of just being a normal human, she can use what's called earth power. And it appears to be something not affected by Spellbreaker's destruction of magic, but it's not a little ambiguous there. It hasn't, maybe the wave hasn't gotten to her yet. We'll see what happens there. Her primary ability seems to be to shape change. She can heal people, if I read that right. And Derwin, the nephew, in this book, he's killed, but the wizard is able to cast a spell to bring him back to life. But something comes back with him. A couple of things come back with him. The paladin who gave his life to kill Lord Bone, and Lord Bone may be contained in this kid. So they have to keep watching over him. All that's left that way. Alf left the sword. He goes wandering about. He does settle somewhere in his original home, and it's just left there, and we will see what happens after that. I don't have any kind of, I don't think there's a release date given here. It just says the story continues in book 3, Lands of the Firstborn. So we'll see what happens there. Wonder what they'll call that one. So we got the Sword Defiant and the Sword Unbound. So the Sword Unleashed, the Sword Extreme. See what happens. Can't wait. Good couple of books. So what's coming next for me is the Blighted Stars. So we got some Space opera, a little post-cyberpunk action it sounds like in there, and people have been raving about that, and people whose opinions I like really like this one. This one has a sequel, so that's out now, so if I like this, I'll go get that and read the sequel before I move on to more Vandermeer. I don't normally buy all the books in a series or a trilogy. I get the first book, and if I like it, then I get the rest, and that's what's happening here with Blighted Stars, obviously. But oh man, I read the Southern Reach trilogy, loved it, and this is becoming a lot of people's favorite new author here, so I said screw it, I'm just gonna get all three. Apparently each one of these features different characters, but it's in the same universe, and this one here, titled Born, this is an actual character in this creature of some kind that a lot of people are saying this is my new favorite character. So I just said screw it. I like buying books anyway, so I just bought all three, and I'll get on those after this one. And that'll do it for me. Happy Memorial Day weekend. I got 4 days off in a row with 1 day for family obligations. Otherwise I'm gonna do a lot of sitting around reading, because that's what I do. Thank you very much. Catch you next time. I hope you have a great day.